All right, so here I'll be going through just a very quick crash course of Make.com. Make actually provides some really good resources for learning how to use their tool. So they have a Make University, which goes through in greater detail how to use the platform. What I'm going to do is, I say, crash course, run through everything quickly, the essentials of what you need to know. So just starting off from the top, we're just going to sign up, put your credentials in here. I've set up a fake account. So yeah, sign up, and then you'll get a verification code. You just click on that to verify your email, and then this will take you into the Make.com account. Okay. You have to go through some questions, I guess, how you came across Make and so on, and just to help them with their research. But this is the screen you'll come to once you log in. All right, so next thing you want to do is just go in and change your organization name. Especially we do this with clients, and sometimes it gets confusing because Make defaults it to my organization. Just change it to your company name. So in this case, just going to change it to Nexiserve. Now we already have our own account that we use. You can set your time zone, your region, your country, and so on. But really just go in and change your name first of all. So if you are operating across different accounts, or if you do have developers who are coming in, it makes everyone's life a bit easier. From there, you have your dashboard here. I guess before I go into the dashboard, first thing you want to do is just sign up with a subscription. You can get billed yearly or monthly. I recommend just starting off monthly. And then in terms of the plans here, I recommend just starting off with the pro plan. $18 a month should do you for now. If it is a case that you find your operations or your scenarios are running up, that's fine. You can always increase it. If you are just testing it out and you're not actually looking to use it for your business, not looking to scale it for your business right now, you can go into the core and just test around. But honestly, if you're looking to start implementing Make, just sign up for the minimum, the pro plan. I wouldn't even bother with the free plan, because you're not able to connect with, let's say, for example, if you want to connect with OpenAI and create AI workflows, you can't do so on the free plan. So recommend the pro plan at least. So what you'll do then is just go in, buy the plan. I'm not going to do it here. As I said, this is just a burner account. And then from here, the different tabs that you have. So we'll go back to organization. What you would have here is we'll show the price that you're paying every month. It will show the operations that you have per month. It will show you any unused operations that you have, billing interval, monthly or annual. And then here you can see graphs of what that looks like over a time period. So if you see that perhaps you're not using up all your operations, or you're on a plan that's higher than what you need, you can always downgrade and so on. Active scenarios, I'll go into scenarios on what that looks like now. These are essentially your active workflows. Team, you can ignore teams. I guess this is more for an enterprise level. Usually what we would do is you can invite team members just by inviting users. And this is also what we usually get our clients to do. If they were to invite us, just invite a new user, and then you can set the roles and permissions. So whether that be admin, whether it be a member, accountant, app developer, whatever that might be, that would depend on the permissions and level of flexibility that you have. So we never really use teams. I'd use users for adding team members on, or adding external developers and so on. Subscriptions, we covered that. So you'll need to sign up with a subscription. Payments, this will essentially just show your invoices and all your monthly payments. Installed apps. So again, I'll show you when we go into scenarios here. But to connect up with your different apps, you'll need to log into your applications. So this will essentially show all the apps that you've installed. Again, we'll go into that when we touch upon scenarios. So team, we've already touched upon team, how you can add your users. And then notification options. This is important. So this is essentially what I would do is you can turn this one off, but you would want to leave these two on: errors in scenario run and scenario deactivation. So this is essentially when your scenarios are no longer working, if there's been an error and it's stopped, or if it's hit a limit. So you want to be notified, because that means that your scenarios aren't running any longer. So you want to be notified by that right away, and that would be sent to you by email. Okay, so next up is scenarios. Now, scenarios is the most important one here. So I might come back to this and we'll go through in more detail. But scenarios are your workflows, your automations. So in here, again, we'll go through and we'll build out each scenario, but a scenario is what Make.com refers to as your automation, your workflow. So you can view your active scenarios, so scenarios that are running, and then your inactive scenarios, concepts, not something we use ourselves. And then you can create folders. So let's say, for example, your lead generation, you have many different let's say, for example, you have many different workflows that are involved. So whether that be scraping leads, whether it be sending out emails, whether it be update, whatever that might be, I would recommend just setting up folders to organize everything. So whether you're creating scenarios or workflows for customer support, for lead generation, for sales, whatever it might be, I do recommend putting it in folders just to keep everything organized, and also give your scenarios proper naming conventions, so that if you want to go over, maybe make adjustments or make amendments to any workflows that you have, you can easily identify that. But I'll go back to scenarios. Scenarios are very important. Template. So Make.com has a great library of templates. So these are workflows that just common workflows. What I recommend is just go through these, have a look through, click on some of them just to see what's possible, especially with some of these ChatGPT steps. So it's showing you how you can implement AI into the actual workflow itself. But I guess some of these are very straightforward. Some of these are very straightforward. Some of them are a little bit more complex, but have a play around with them. You might even find what you're looking for is already here in a template. So yeah, have a scroll through these, and it might also give you some ideas of what you can build out as well. So definitely recommend reading through. Connections are, so as I said, you'll need to log into different apps, so your accounts. So let's say, for example, if I'm logging into my Gmail or if I'm logging into my CRM, I'll need to log in through that application. So this essentially just shows you all the authorized access. So if I log in through my email, it will show that that account that I've logged in through. So pretty straightforward enough. And then next in the tab section here, you have your webhooks. So this is essentially where you'll store and manage your webhooks. I'll be going into more detail what webhooks are and how you'd use them, but essentially it's how external apps would trigger a scenario or a workflow in Make. So when something happens, that would be triggered through a webhook. But again, we'll go through more detail. And then lastly here, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the remaining tabs. Keys, that's referring to API keys. So typically we'll set the we will always set up the API key directly in the scenario. So again, I wouldn't pay too much attention to this. As we said, this is a crash course where we can focus on the priorities. Okay, so we're just going to jump to scenarios. So this is the most important aspect you'll need to know. This is building out your automations and building out your workflows. So let's just create a new scenario. Okay, so this is where you'll build out your automations. First thing I do is get into the habit of naming your scenarios. This just keeps everything nice and organized. So like I mentioned previously, have a folder for different areas of your business, and then have naming conventions for different workflows. Just so if you need to reference or need to make changes to any of your workflows, you can go back and easily identify. So in this case, I'm just going to call it test. At the bottom, run once. So this essentially allows you to manually trigger the workflow. So as you're building out these automations, you will be testing it by running once. So I'll show you what that looks like, but you will run once and then that will test that all the connections are working. Intervals, you can set your workflows to run in intervals, and it's quite flexible. So I know the default here is 15 minutes. You can do every day, the third day of every month at this time, or whatever it might be, every week, or every hour, every 2 hours. This goes on. It's very flexible with in terms of that. So you can save. Look, these are all pretty straightforward. You can save here. You can import. A blueprint is essentially a template. So you can import if somebody has sent you a template. You can import that and it will essentially have the blueprint there for you. Same with exporting a blueprint. If you build out a scenario or a workflow, you can export that workflow and use it across another account or send it across to somebody to use as their workflow. And then also Make.com has, like everything, has implemented an AI solution here. Really helpful. So it can help you find templates. It can help you with building scenarios. If you are ever stuck, you can ask questions to Make.com. You can essentially explain what it is you're looking for and it will help you with that. So a really, really helpful assistant to have in the corner. It's quite a new feature. Very helpful, only getting better and better. So again, just adding to, you don't need to be overly technical to build this out. You have things like the AI assistant in the corner to help you out. But we're going to ignore this anyway, and we're just going to add an application here. So you can scroll through here. As I said, Make can natively integrate with thousands and thousands of apps. So have a scan through here, even search for some of the apps and solutions that you use. So whether that be your CRM, a lot of clients use Monday, or Monday.com, where a lot of clients use Go High Level or Salesforce or HubSpot. But again, look for the different solutions that you use. You have your social media platforms, you have your emails, you have your AI models, which is important. So you have Claude, think about Perplexity, think about OpenAI. So very, very important when it comes to building out AI automation workflows. Keep it very simple. I'm going to show you connecting a solution, connecting and signing into one of your systems. Keep it very simple with Google Sheets. So what I'll need to do here is create a connection, and what it will require me to do is just log into my account. So as I said, we're using a burner account here. Perfect. So now I'm signed into my Google Sheets account. Now in terms of, I don't have any spreadsheets set up at the moment, so you can select between the different spreadsheets and so on. What I'll actually do for the example is let's set up a Google Sheets here. Okay, let's give it a naming convention. So test sheet. Okay, and then let's give it some very brief headings. So name, email, industry, qualified. Again, just for the sake of an example here, just so I can show you what each of these fields mean. You can go into here. This will show your Google Drive, whether it be shared drives with you or whether it just be your own drive. And then to identify the spreadsheet, what we'll do is click here, and then this should show all the sheets that you have. Now, as I said, you can, in your Google Drive, you might have different folders where your sheets live, and you can go and select that, and then that will allow you to better identify the sheet ID. So we're just going to connect test sheet, which is this one we created now. Okay, and sheet name is sheet 1. So what it means, obviously, by that, if we had whatever different tabs. So we're just going to take sheet 1 for this spreadsheet. Table contains headers. Yes, these are the headers that we put in. Sometimes your Excel sheets won't have headers. That's fine. You just put no. And then the headers, let me move myself here. Headers are, so it's A1 to D1. So we're just going to get rid of Z1 to D1. So it's not the entire row. And then limits are essentially how many new rows that Make will go in and fetch per execution. So when I say per execution, this runs on an interval. And I guess let me go backwards a bit here and let me X off. And then let's delete this. My bad. Let me delete this module. Okay. So what I should have started with is within each application, you have different actions here. So you can have a scroll through, have a look at the actions. So this one, for example, watch new rows. So this is a trigger. And what I mean by a trigger is this will trigger the workflow. So as you can see with this little clock here, and I'll show you now after, this is running in intervals. So this will check every 15 minutes and it will watch if there is a new row added. And when a new row is added, then it will trigger that automation. So you have different actions here, whether it be your rows. So updates to a row, whether it be, look, again, you can scroll through these, whether it be just the cell. So updates to a cell. So for example, if it's just a qualified, if it's qualified to yes, if it's changed from nothing to yes, that's a change in the cell, and that will trigger the workflow. Or essentially just watching for any changes in the cell. So again, just go through these, have a look, see what's possible, get an understanding. Again, this can be at the rows level, so that's your columns, and then, or it can be at the cells, so your individual cells or your sheets. As I said, we can perform this on the sheets here. So have a look through the different actions. Again, this will open up some of the ideas that you might have. You might have noticed here on the side, the little clock here, as I said, this will run in intervals. So we can run in regular intervals every 15 minutes. We can run just a once off. We can run it every day. And we can pick particular days of the week, days of the month, specified dates. On demand is, so on demand is really just, that way is allowing you to trigger that manually. So let's just set it back to regular intervals. Let's just keep it at 15 minutes. Keep it there. Hang on, regular intervals. Let me move myself here. Save. Let's go back to Google Sheets. And then let's just do for watch a new row. So again, to keep this nice and brief, okay, we're just going to keep it with Z1, sheet name, sheet 1. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to add another module. And with this module, we're going to add add our hang on, email. Sorry, there we go. So we're going to add our email. And again, I'm just showing you from connecting on to another module. So we're going to have to authorize again, access permissions. So the first module we do is the trigger. Next one is the action. So the next step in the process, like I mentioned, remember we said take your process step by step. So this is the next step in the process. And then what we're going to do is let's just create a draft. And this is going to make us create a connection. And then, so I did it as email here. So you can connect it with whatever email type it might be. If it's your Microsoft, if it's your Google, let me just do Google. Save, then let me just sign in. Okay, allow access. Let me mute myself here. Okay, so this is a very good point to note. I forgot I was still using my burner account, which was, it's a personal Gmail. For obvious reasons, it's a burner. But important note is that it needs to be a business email that you're connecting up here. So due to Google security reasons that you can't connect your personal email, it needs to be your company domain. So important to note that. So that's fine. Let's switch over from the burner account over to our NexiServe account. I've created the exact same workflow here. So same sheet as before. Everything set up same as before. And then with the Gmail, I connected it up, but connect it with our company domain. And then from here, it will connect with your email, and you can select, so you can select what inbox. So we have loads of different inboxes here, but let's keep it simple. So it's selecting from the inbox. And then what you can do is you can send yourself, let's say, for example, again, we'll touch on some more workflows, but let's say, for example, anytime a new row is added that you want to be updated by email. So that's fine. You can set, and let's say it's your CRM. So it's a new lead that's coming in. So the subject is new lead, and then the content is dynamic. So let's just say, for example, hi Ben. So I want to be notified anytime there's a new lead. We have received a new lead in your CRM / Google Sheets. And then you have your variables here. So you can stick in a link to the sheet, and then obviously you'll need to send this to a recipient. So I'm going to send this to myself, or I'm going to send it to my personal email. So I know I said you can't connect, so you can't set the automation coming from your personal email. You can send that right through to your personal email. So I can send this through to ben.test@gmail.com. So that means that anytime new lead comes in, updates and gets sent across to my personal email. Now again, look, this is just to run around and show you the functionality. We will go into more specific workflows and use cases. I guess this is more to kind of give you an overview of the functionality. So if you go to this little step here, what you can do is you can set up, so you can add a module. So let's say if you forgot a step, so let's say you built one step, you forgot, oh, there's another step previous to this. You can insert a module in between. You can insert a router. So we'll go through what that looks like. We can set up a filter. So setting up a filter is, let's say for this example here, let's say for the example with the email, we only want to be notified when it's a qualified lead. So when the qualified equals yes, we don't want when it's a no, we just want it to be qualified leads that come through. Okay. So what we'll do is if the condition is, and then this is where you pull in the variables again. So whether it be, let's just do the qualified example. So condition qualified is equal to yes. And let's say we want to set another rule that, and the email is, so again, there's so many different options here, but I guess what we can put to is that the email does not contain, because let's say we don't want, let's say for example, we don't want private emails. So we don't want Gmail. So it does not contain Gmail. So you get the idea. You can play around with the filters and so on here. So let's save that. So essentially the best way to learn the platform is to jump in and start building out workflows. So in the next couple of modules, we'll go through some examples. We'll start building out workflows that you can follow along together. But what I would recommend is go in and just start playing around with it. Start mapping out your processes. As I said, start small. So start with some of your more simple and linear processes just to get a feel for the platform. And then as you start to develop your understanding of how everything works, how you can build out scenarios, then start building upon more complex workflows. But let me see, as I said, wanted to use this as a bit of a crash course, high level overview of some of the key features. Let me see if there's anything else we're missing here. Okay, so yeah, let's go through these lastly very quickly. So what a router is it would essentially allows you to create different branches within the workflow. So let's go back to the example that we have here. So we might have the qualification criteria or qualification values equal yes, no. We might have the rest of the fields filled in, but the qualified field is empty. So let's take those as 3 outcomes. Qualified equals yes, qualified equals no, and qualified is empty. In that case, we could use router to build out different branches to the workflow. So when qualified equals yes, then it follows this path, and this path is sending an email to the individual or updating the team about a qualified lead coming in. If the qualified equals no, maybe we can add a tag in the CRM to do not contact. Or if the qualified field is empty, for example, we might notify your appointment setting team or your sales team that we received this new lead, but it needs further qualification. So they're notified about a lead that's come in, but it needs more qualification to understand where they're at. The next one is iterator. So what an iterator is it essentially lets you split up one value into single values. And I guess the best way of putting this is let's use this example that let's say we have a lead that comes in, but there's 5 emails and we can't send at once to 5 emails. How that would work is an iterator would break that value up into 5 separate emails. So in this case, we could break up, rather than that one value being the 5 emails, we will break those emails up into individual values, meaning that we can then send out emails to those 5 people individually. And then the next one here is array. So the array is essentially, I like to think of it as sort of a inverse to the iterator. So let's say you want to use the example here, we send daily leads that come in. What the array will do is essentially package all these different values together into a summary. So like that, we might have 5 new leads that come in today. The array will consolidate or pull together the values for all 5 of those leads or those inputs and pull it into, in this case, a summary that we can get an email of, a summary of all the leads that come in, rather than having to get updated every time. Let's say we have 5 new leads, rather than getting 5 updates in the day, we can use the array that will pull that all together, let's say at the end of the day, to pull in all the values, all the new leads that have come. So as I said, next couple of modules we'll go through and build workflows out together. But as I said, hopefully this was a good crash course or a high level understanding of how to use Make. As I mentioned, they do have an academy, Make Academy, which goes into things in a lot more detail. But I like to approach things from a practical manner, jumping in and start building things out. So that's what we'll move on to next.